the average person sitting at home in front of their computer, even though our computers have a lot of computing power and you know, we're on broadband now, I mean, the average person cannot see what you see. Right. So you're talking about something that you can see. Kind of explain what kind of setup you have, or what makes that.
Great. For instance, we have a host of computers, Preston. You've seen our trading room, and we've got all these computers set up, many of which are there just monitoring for unusual activity. What I'll define as unusual activity is we'll do a look back over the last 5 days to 2 weeks and see what the average daily volume was, what was the volatility in a given option class. And the computers are constantly comparing more quickly than I could or than any human being could what's the average activity today versus what it was 2 days ago, 5 days ago, a week ago. And if all of a sudden something starts popping up and the computer starts following one stock in particular that has real unusual activity, then we know something's happening in that stock. I'd say it's accurate about 70 to 80% of the time that when we see unusual activity, it's ahead of an event that's about to happen. I mean, we've got a whole bunch of potential examples we could give you, folks. Preston and I, a year ago, we were looking at Research in Motion. And believe it or not, even though the maker of BlackBerry pagers that's based up in Ontario, Canada, is now on everybody's lips because it seems to be a household word how popular these BlackBerry devices are and so forth. When we were first citing it, you and I, Preston, there weren't that many people that were really following this stock and expecting massive moves. But all of a sudden one day, when you and I were talking about it and we were putting it up on the website to our subscribers, we saw real unusual activity occurring in Research in Motion options.
There happened to be an earnings announcement after the close that particular day. I believe it was December 23rd of 2003. And yeah, and so now your computers, did it set off a signal to you, or?
Indeed.
Okay.
All of a sudden, bells and whistles, if you will, are going off. We know something's going to happen in that stock. Now, folks, if you're following that stock like we are, and all of a sudden you see very unusual activity in the call options, calls are, of course, a bullish bet. Puts would be a bearish bet on the direction that the earnings would take. We saw very unusual activity. I think it was somewhere between 60 and 90,000 call options that were trading in Research in Motion, telling us something big was about to happen in that stock. So we put it out there, Preston, for the subscribers, many of which are still on the website under our what do our customers say about the service. And there were guys that made $10,000, some guys that made $100,000 based on that call.
Because overnight. And they had to put up some money to risk. But again, the options move in a big leveraged way. I mean, they're pretty much jumping into that smart money, so to say, right along with whoever's doing it.
Yeah. In other words, you can coattail on the smart money. I mean, What is the smart money doing? Smart money's buying these options. So if you've got a situation like that, folks, where you've got a big institution taking a very large position, just hours ahead of an earnings announcement, number one, they think they know something. Maybe they do. Maybe they've done like in Wall Street, the movie with Charlie Sheen and Michael Douglas, and they've actually followed some executives around on their motorcycle or something like that. However they've gathered the information, they think they know something that you and I don't know otherwise. So what can we do? Well, thank goodness, Preston, that people do either have this sort of knowledge that they've gained and they're tipping their hand to us so that we can act on it. We can just run right along with them. They were buying these out-of-the-money calls. Many of the subscribers to our services got in there, bought these calls. Hours later, when the news came out that the earnings were spectacular, the stock started trading up. I believe it traded up $5, $6, $8 in the after-hour session, Preston, and then over the next few days,
it was very next day up $26.
$26,
50% move. That's in the stock.
Yep, that's the underlying stock. So if you bought an option for 50 cents or 75 cents or $1, any of those prices, all of a sudden that option went from 50 cents to $20. You've got a home run.
We talked about these analysts, and one word that came to my mind is greed. You know, getting people out at the bottom range of a stock, scaring the last ones out so they can get their buddies in and buy at the bottom, scaring people out at letting people get in at the top, you know, issuing a strong buy at the very top of a range, getting people to buy more there, of course, when they're selling out at the top. So greed kind of comes to my mind there. And so let me bring this up with you. Speaking about greed, so you mean to tell me that as long as there's greed on Wall Street, will you see them tipping their hand in the options market first? Why do they go to the options market? We know what you can see. Your computers can decipher when that happens or when something's starting to heat up. But why does the greed go to the options market? And do they worried about getting busted with insider trading? And why isn't what you're issuing out there insider trading?
Sure. Well, quite obviously, they're not terribly concerned about insider trading.
Yeah, I mean,
because they do it so frequently. And boy, I've got a host of examples. I mean, just 3 weeks after that RIM trade, Research in Motion, Preston, we were following Bank One options, folks. And Bank One, right at the end of the trading day, saw massive speculation in their out-of-the-money calls. The stock was, I believe, trading around $43 a share. The out-of-the-money calls, let's say the 47 calls and the 50 calls, got very unusual activity right at the end of the day. That stock, in the next few hours, next few minutes, came out and announced that J.P. Morgan Chase was buying out Jamie Dimon's Bank One. Well, that stock jumped $6 in the after-hour session. So what that meant was people that were buying these options, these out-of-the-money options with just 3 days to trade, happened Wednesday of expiration week, I think, Preston. And what happened there was they were buying these options for a nickel or a dime, meaning that 10 cents, folks, represents just $10 investment. So they bought thousands of these options. They put a few dollars on the table. That few dollars became worth $6 very quickly. So in other words, they went from putting 10 cents on the table to making $6. They basically made $500,000 or $600,000, Preston, in just minutes when this happened. And quite frankly, insider trades, or at least informed trades like this, happen all the time. As long as there's greed on Wall Street, there's going to be people that are doing this. And as long as there is a Wall Street, there will be people that are trading on very good intel. And it's just what we're acting on, though, folks, since we're not the insiders, this is not insider trading on our part.
You're noticing a trade on a screen, and by just noticing activity, it is what it is.
Exactly. We're just doing the research. We're detectives. So what we're doing is ferreting, digging through all this information, finding that needle in a haystack, if you will. We've talked about all the information sources that you have and how tough it is to narrow it down to which ones are important. When we find them, Preston, then we'll publish it on the site under either unusual activity, or we'll make it a trade of the day, or one of our new services, an option trade, where we'll put it out there and say, hey folks, here's a real limited risk way to participate in what we think is going to be a nice rebound in this stock.
That just brings up a point, and I've known this, but I didn't think about it in this way. When you do see unusual option volume, there's no aftermarket option trading.
That's right.
So it's not like you're seeing something that, if you're seeing it, that means there's still time in the day, as long as the alert goes out, where someone can get on that day, because once options stop trading, they stop trading.
Yeah.
It's not like aftermarket where, I can't trade in that stock, it's after hour, I don't have an after hours account or whatever. That's happening that day. And
right. So with inside options, Preston, what we try to do is appeal to both sides of traders. To the pure stock trader, we put out stocks to watch every morning that are not trading on unusual activity necessarily, but that had some sort of compelling catalyst to get you in. For instance, folks, when you're looking for a compelling catalyst, Preston and I both have unique ways of looking for those. Many times Preston's, of course, looking for something like a split or an increase in the outstanding shares that might indicate they're about to make a split in the stock or something like that. My catalysts are usually something like there's a product announcement that's due out, there's a settlement of a litigation that's due, there's some sort of courtroom process going on, like with Martha Stewart when she was before the courts a few months ago. And there's also things like earnings that are obviously very important to the stock. And when you've got a catalyst like that that's causing you to focus on that stock, that's what I'm looking for with our stock of the day, Preston. That's what we put out. It usually goes out by about 5:45 or 6 a.m. Central Time, about 2.5 hours before the trading day begins. So if you have access to that after hours that Preston's talking about, or pre-market trading with an ECN, you can participate in these. If you don't, A, you could switch brokers, and B, you could give some discretion to a broker at a firm that does have that after hours capability, because that's how you'd participate. Because like I say, what you get every morning from us in our Stocks to Watch is a recap of the 4 or 5 most important stories of the day and our Stock to Watch, and you get that 2.5 hours before the trading day begins.